I see some people waiting. There we go. We are up. What up? This is promising to be a fun show. We need to stream the behind the scenes things for you guys to laugh. It's a good laugh. It's definitely a good laugh. Anyway, here we are, the AFC North talk. We said that we are gonna do more videos, right? And now training camp's about to open, so we figured we need to rank in the AFC North. QBs, receivers. Obviously, we're gonna do secondary, D line, and all the other positions. But hey, we wanna try to make it into a timely flash in an hour. So anyway, we're here with Tony, Quincy, Ace, and myself, SCG Sports Sunny. It's gonna be fun. So guys, we should start with QB or should we start with wide receiver?
Well, I think either one. I don't see any controversy in this one. I think it's going to be pretty standard where everyone goes here. I can't see any position where there's really going to be any controversy. Let's start quarterback though. Let's start quarterback.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Ace.
So I think what we said before the show is that we're going to start at 1 because I believe with this position it's not going to be so much drama. So, I mean, obviously, with Lamar Jackson coming off of an MVP year, he's taken over the AFC North by storm. This is going to be essentially his third year, but this is going to be kind of like his second full year. So, I'm going to start with Lamar Jackson at number 1.
Quincy.
Yep. Exactly what he said. But in all honesty, yeah, it has to be the Ravens. They have the MVP. Also, again, we're talking about quarterback rooms, the entire room. RG3, capable backup, we found out last year when he beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in a Week 17 game that the Steelers absolutely needed to win in order to make the playoffs.
Not terrible. Not terrible. I mean, not great.
Not a terrible backup. Now, he's a very capable backup to do what they do. He gets a lot of time in the fourth quarter when the Ravens are up, and he won them a game last year that they probably shouldn't have won. I know, Tony, they shouldn't have won that game, but they took it. They took it. They put 38 points on 38 points on one of the best defenses in football with RG3 back there behind a secondary offensive line, and then Gus Johnson is a starting run back. So you got to give him his props. So obviously,
28,
Lamar Jackson, this is a good amount of points.
28, and there was a blocked punt, so 21 really. But anyway, continue.
Anyway, so RG3 helps put that case over the top, but obviously Lamar Jackson is the entire case. But I wanted to give some love to the backup quarterback because they factor into this conversation too, and that come in later.
That is true. Now for me, easy, right? Ravens, Lamar, MVP, as Ace and Quincy said. I'm not gonna be biased. I'm just thinking like being the MVP puts it over the top. And yeah, like Quincy said, RG3 is a more than capable backup. So yeah, for me, easy LJ. So Tony, I'm interested to hear your take.
Yeah, where am I going to go QB1 here, right? That what has the best quarterback? Because one team has a future Hall of Famer in it, right? And a duck, by the way. So
this is why you're in the stream. You see next to the duck. That's purposely there.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I don't know if the future Hall of Famer is on the team is the guy without the MVP. You know what I mean? Like I think Lamar might be the only real future Hall of Famer in there. But
okay. Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to shock the world there. I'm also going to go with the Ravens at number 1 here. Okay. Obviously, you have Lamar Jackson coming off of an MVP season. He was fantastic. Yes, RG3 is good. I don't put backup quarterbacks in a whole lot of high esteem here, right? The Steelers had to deal with backup quarterbacks for the last year. They were 8-8. They were fine. Backup quarterback is pretty overrated unless you have Nick Foles and you are the Philadelphia Eagles. Otherwise, if your quarterback goes down, you are pretty much toast. But Lamar Jackson, look, I know Ben Roethlisberger is a future Hall of Famer, 2-time Super Bowl champion, but there's no way you can put Ben Roethlisberger above Lamar Jackson right now after what he just did. And really what Lamar Jackson's done for 2 years when you consider that he also came in for those last 8 games, took that team to a 10-6 record and made the playoffs in a year where no one expected it. Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, number 1 for me.
Okay, for number 2, this is where it starts getting interesting. I'm going to start with Q in this one. Who you have your number 2 QB or QB?
Now remember, QB room. This is what I'm saying. And I want to start this off by saying all 3 of these teams are pretty much tied for second or last, however you see it, because there's massive variables that go on with each of these quarterback rooms that we have to acknowledge. Well, number 2, it's gonna upset some people, but I do what I do. It's gonna be the Browns. Here's why.
Shocked.
Because look, if you look at the situation that's most comparable, and that's Pittsburgh, right? You have a situation where that can either go really right or really wrong in Pittsburgh. Even the most diehard Steeler fan understands that there is a level of uncertainty that comes with bringing back big men at this age, with coming off of an elbow surgery on his throwing arm. Baker Mayfield, same amount of risk. You could get the guy who broke the rookie touchdown record in his rookie year, or you could get Baker Mayfield from last year, which is a disaster. But what the Browns have that does put them over the hump is that they have Case Keenum at backup quarterback, which is honestly not a terrible solution for what this team's going to do to start the season. So there's more comfort in the room knowing that, hey, if Baker Mayfield stinks, at least you have a floor that you can see that's easy to point out. With everybody else, I have no idea where these floors are with the Pittsburgh Steelers, given their backup situation last year, which is awful. And then not knowing what you're going to get out of Ben, if he's going to be there, if he's not going to be ready to go. And then with the Bengals, even though I'm optimistic on Joe Burrow, he's still a rookie coming into the NFL, into one of the toughest divisions and one of the divisions with the toughest defenses. Even a team like the Browns, who have a pretty bad defense in the standard of the AFC North, has Myles Garrett, which is enough to concern a rookie quarterback. So a lot of uncertainty in these quarterback rooms, and that's why I think Case Keenum being the backup and then Baker Mayfield being there kind of it's a little bit more of a stable environment. Now, this isn't massively better than Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, but it's just a hair up.
Okay, Ace.
For me, it's going to pain me to say this, but it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. You talk about Ben Roethlisberger, that's going to be a factor. Like Quincy kind of said, there's a lot of variables there. If Big Ben is healthy, and that's a big if he is healthy, I think that he still is a more than capable Ben, but we don't know which Ben we're going to get. We don't know if we're going to get Ben from a few seasons ago or if we're going to get Ben that's kind of old and washed up and it's starting to kind of look like Eli Manning. But when you look at the entire group, that's the other thing. You talk about Duck Hodges, you talk about Mason Rudolph. Yes, those guys aren't amazing. They're not going to do anything. But the reality is, between those two guys last year, they still went 8-8. And then you also have to factor in the other two quarterbacks that are in that room that no one's talking about. And you're talking about Paxton Lynch, who is a guy that was a former first-round quarterback. And then you also have JT Barrett. So when I look at that and I look at this QB room possibly being 5 deep, not saying that these guys are world beaters or anything, but they're more than capable over there. There's a lot of guys that, will be fighting for the back end of that position. So in my opinion, honestly, looking at all these guys, I'm probably shocked if there isn't some kind of trade that happens in preseason if another quarterback goes down somewhere.
Unfortunately, that's not going to happen because the front office loves Mason Rudolph. So, look, this is a team that had their chances to get a guy like Jameis Winston. They had their chances at Cam Newton, right? Because these are guys who signed very team-friendly deals. And the Steelers, while yes, they are cap strapped, they could have signed either one. They chose not to because they still believe that Mason Rudolph can be the future. And look, I understand where they're coming from. Do I want to write Mason Rudolph off after what we saw last year? Yes. But that's why I'm on this show and Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin are making the big bucks, right? They clearly know better than I. Although I did call Duck from day one to training camp. Let's not forget that. So here's where my rankings are. I have the Steelers at 2. Now I expected this to be a much more controversial take. So Ace, I appreciate you going before me there and also putting the Steelers at 2, even though this should not be controversial in any stretch of the imagination. Ben Roethlisberger is a future Hall of Fame quarterback. And yes, I understand that there are a lot of questions about Ben Roethlisberger coming off of elbow injury. And I've talked about this, right? Ben Roethlisberger is 37 years old. He's coming off of elbow surgery, and he didn't look particularly good last year. But as I've talked about before, Ben Roethlisberger doesn't look good at the start of any season. And last year, who did he play in his only game? It was against the best defense in the league, the New England Patriots. So yes, he didn't look good in that game. But if you go back to the last season he played, this is a guy who threw for 5,100 yards. Okay, this is a guy who threw for 34 touchdowns. Ben Roethlisberger still was playing at a high level, and I don't think this team is going to need him to be playing at that level again. But I still believe Ben Roethlisberger is the second best quarterback in this division. I think more than capable of helping this team where they want to go, which is I believe winning a Super Bowl. Baker, look, the Baker Mayfield comparisons, those are fine, but Baker is not anywhere on the level of Ben Roethlisberger yet. There was some signs his rookie year. He took a massive step backwards last year. So I think as many questions you want to talk about with Ben, there are that many questions about Baker. And then, look, the backup quarterback situation, I think Ace hit it very nicely. Look, we could talk about how bad Mason Rudolph and how bad Duck were. Baker Mayfield won 6 games last year. The Steelers' backup quarterbacks won 8.
Yeah, but that's a product. That's a product of a team more than a player, right? Baker. I'm not trying to defend that Baker was good.
No. I'm not saying it's all on the quarterbacks either, right? But quarterbacks wins is a thing, right? We don't, you don't win football games if you have complete crap quarterback play. Let's look at the worst.
You won 8 with crap quarterback play. You just said. So I get what you're saying. Like if you're an upper tier quarterback and you're Ben Roethlisberger, yeah, QB wins are a stat because you're Big Ben.
Yeah,
but if you're Mason Rudolph and Duck, let's be honest about 4 of those games that you won with those guys behind it. You weren't necessarily saying thank God Mason Rudolph was in the game in that situation. You were saying thank God for Minka Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt and all the other people who helped bring you to that win. It wasn't like the quarterback was there. And I get your point that you're saying, hey, the mediocre quarterback play still netted 8 wins, but in the NFL, that's very fragile. And there were a lot of situations last year that could have went either way, that season could have not been 8-8.
Right, but what you want out of your quarterback, well, your backup quarterback is to come in and don't lose me this game, right? Do not lose me this game. I'm going to win it in other ways. The Pittsburgh Steelers proved last year is they have 2 quarterbacks who were capable of that. Now, I understand Mason had some really horrible games. We could talk about the Thursday game against Cleveland. He was horrible. But they put in Duck, and it was the same thing, right? I mean, this is a team that can win with their backups just fine. They won 8 games. They were again, like you guys talked about, they were within a game of making the playoffs with these guys. So I look, the Steelers backup quarterback situation, it isn't great, but I don't think it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be. So I have the Steelers too.
Okay, so let me jump in here. I think I'm actually gonna agree with Q. I'm gonna pick up the Browns.
Shocked.
Because the reason is we don't know how Big Ben is. Yeah, Big Ben fully healthy. Better than what we have seen, but we don't know. He's coming from Tommy John surgery. Pitchers take a while for that. You put a lot of torque when you're in a quarterback in your elbow. So, yeah, man. So, and even if I'm gonna go neck and neck, and I understand what Ace was talking about the quarterback room. The quarterback room of Pittsburgh are Mason Rudolph got benched by Duck. Duck got benched by Mason, and 2 other guys that are just journeymans in the league. Yes, Paxton Lynch was probably one of Elway's regrets in his life. He was a flop in Denver. He went to, I think, Seattle. Also didn't pay out there. So those 2, in my opinion, are going to get cut. And, I mean, to be honest, they should cut all 4 of them and try to figure out somebody else. But regardless, Case Keenum is a guy that can win you a couple games a year. Right? Case Keenum is a decent quarterback. He is, and I think behind Baker, he's good because if he comes in for Baker, you don't have to change the system. He can, come in and fail out for a couple games. So I'm gonna go with the Browns edging the Steelers for number 2. Now, number 3, I want to go with Ace. Who you have your number 3, man?
So for number 3, I mean, it has to be the Cleveland Browns. Just speaking with no bias here. I think, like you just hit on, Case Keenum, the only reason that I gave the Steelers the edge again was the end because I don't even know who Garrett Gilbert is, and that's their 3rd quarterback. But I've got to give it to the Browns because of Baker
Quincy,
and I think Case Keenum.
Muted. Sorry, Quincy, you were muted. Go ahead. Sorry, Ace.
Sorry. So what I was saying is the one thing, though, if Baker would have been coming off of a year that was similar to his rookie year, I probably would have had the Browns at number 2. Because I would have something to go off of based off of what we've seen and what we haven't seen from Ben. So if Baker was coming off of a great year, I would easily have the Browns number 2. That would definitely give them the edge. But I think because Baker had so many concerning issues last year, and I was high on Baker. I picked him and drafted him in my fantasy league. I was ready and everything, but it just didn't work out how I thought that it would, especially with the weapons and everything. But I think this year that has room to change. But for me, based off of Baker's last year performance is why I have the Browns at number 3 and not at number 2. So for me, they definitely have a way stronger quarterback room than I would say my Bengals because, like you said, Case Keenum, It's already been established. You already know what he is. I've seen Ryan Finley firsthand. He is complete garbage. That is also why I said that, Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph aren't bad, but they can at least throw a football over 10 yards. So for me, that's where I have it is the Browns at number 3.
Quincy.
Hold on, let me take some water before I say this. All right, so the number 3 ranked quarterback room. Now, again, I might be looking at this from a little bit of a different perspective. I'm taking the whole room in, and I'm thinking about it from a perspective, what would I want if I were the GM of this team? Which one of these situations would I rather be in? Mm-hmm. And again, this is going to barely edge out the other team that I'm saying, but honestly, I'd rather be the Cincinnati Bengals from a quarterback room perspective. Honestly, I would much rather be them. They have Joe Burrow. At least you have something to build on for the future. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers realistically are in a situation where it's like this year, next year, maybe, and you better hold on tight after that because you got no plan and you're the Pittsburgh Steelers and you're not going to be mediocre enough to get anybody good eventually. And then you're going to be trotting out JT Barrett there trying to start him, like trying to put out Paxton Lynch for a third run, pretty much doing what Baltimore was doing when they were running out. What was his name? Ryan Mallett, just begging.
We don't talk about Ryan Mallett in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they were in a situation begging, please, God, somebody be better than Joe Flacco. And I think that's the situation that the Steelers are going to be in the future. And that being said, if I'm a GM of a team and you're like, hey, take one of these quarterback rooms and you're offering me the guy who's 23 years old, Ace?
Yep.
Is that correct? 23 years old and went through the SEC last year like it was the Sun Belt, or this 38-year-old dude coming off elbow surgery on his throwing arm that looked terrible in 2 games last year. It really isn't a hard choice. I get why people aren't going to go with that because the brand name of Ben Roethlisberger is so big and so large, and he has accomplished so many great things. And while I think it's debatable if he's a Hall of Famer, but he's probably going to get in the Hall of Fame.
It's debatable. Yeah, it's debatable. Yeah.
Unless he's going to get into the Hall of Fame from his play on the field to some people, and he's well regarded enough off the field to get in with no kind of pushback. If Kurt Warner can get in, Big Ben should be able to get in, but we could talk about the criteria to take a quarterback to get in. I'm not trying to take anything away from Big Ben and who he used to be, but I'm going to say that in this conversation, I'm not going to take that into account because that's not the Big Ben that you're getting. You're not getting anything from before 2018. At least with Joe Burrow,
how do you know that? What future have you seen where we know we're not going to get any closer to
elbow surgery on his throwing arm? Am I supposed to believe he's going to come back and just be balling?
Listen.
What if Tom Brady had ACL surgery last season?
Tom Brady had ACL surgery at age 32, and he came back and he played 9 more years.
32, though, Tony. He was 32.
5 years younger than Ben. What are we talking about? I mean, you play till you're 45 now. Okay, excuse me. Drew Brees just had go ahead, finish up.
Ace, how old is your child?
My son is 3 years old.
He's 3. So when that, how long ago, how old Ace feels because he got a 3-year-old child. He's been raising that kid for 3 years. That's 3 years. Add 2 to that. That was how much younger Tom Brady was when he had the ACL surgery. And then let's not forget, dog, he's Tom Brady. Tom Brady takes care of his body. Tom Brady drinks kale and just does yoga.
Ben Roethlisberger at 35. Okay, he's so old, 35 years old. 5,100 yards. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? This is a guy who the last time we saw him play led the NFL through 67% of his passes complete, 5,100 yards. All of a sudden, he got elbow surgery. Well, he literally cannot play. Peyton Manning had neck surgery. Okay, Peyton Manning had neck surgery, I believe, at 34 or 35.
And he was crap.
No, he was not. He threw for 5,000 yards next year. He set every NFL record. He went to 2 Super Bowls after that. Okay, so this idea that aging quarterbacks who have surgery fall off a cliff, it is absolutely
it's the type of surgery, though. No. The type of surgery matters too,
right?
Because
neck surgery way easier to recover from than elbow surgery.
As your throwing arm in your elbow, where you have to put torque as you put in the spin.
Sure.
Dude, it matters. It does. The surgery does
I'm
matter.
not saying it doesn't matter, but this idea that there's no chance that Ben comes back okay, right? This
I'm not
idea,
saying no chance.
we're all doctors now.
saying
We know,
there's no
well, you
chance.
can't come back from an elbow surgery.
We're not saying
We're not saying it's
We're
no
not saying
chance.
it's
We're
no
saying
chance.
it's less than 50%.
It is
it's
not less than it is at worst 50-50. Okay, it is at best, as we've seen.
Worse.
It is as we've seen with all aging players who go through this. Okay, you are a very high likelihood of coming back and being at least good enough to play at an NFL level, which again is all the Steelers need Ben Roethlisberger to do.
Steelers fans.
Go ahead.
Big
Continue.
man don't even do yoga. How am I supposed to expect he about to come back from this rehab? This man don't stretch. This man don't lift. This man just literally sits back every offseason.
Bend the elbow.
Every podcast we do the same thing, and all I do is I look at the date and I go, I got a couple more months before this will be nothing. And listen, when Ben Roethlisberger goes for 3 touchdowns on opening day, this conversation gets put to bed. Thank goodness, because holy cow, all offseason, all we do is talk about how Ben Roethlisberger. Well, he's so. Listen, I get it because Ben Roethlisberger has dominated this division for 15 years, and you guys want to believe in fantasy land that it's over now, and in 2 years it will be. But unfortunately, you got a couple more years to wait.
Serious question though, Tony.
Yeah.
Why is it not fair to expect Big Ben to fall off a cliff when the other 2 quarterbacks who have taken in the draft class that have suffered less injuries, have been hit less, sacked less, and have a less concerning injury profile, and also not coming off of elbow surgery on the throwing arm, have all fell off a cliff?
No, they didn't fall off a cliff. They did this. It was a consistent downward spiral. Look at statistically year after year.
Rivers fell off of a cliff.
Philip Rivers
to go with good.
Eli agree. Eli was definitely a steady fall,
continued to
but
go
Philip
down.
Rivers fell off of a cliff.
Eli went from like mediocre to all right. Now he's
Eli
just
Rivers.
not
Okay, excuse me. No. Okay.
So I'm just saying, like, what is
Rivers,
it about? Like, what is it that's tangible about this Big Ben situation?
It's workout.
That think that he has more of a chance of lasting longer than these 2 guys who we can all agree have taken care of their bodies better, who have not been injured as much, not been sacked as much as Big Ben has.
Okay, Ben hasn't.
Let's just talk about the percentages. Let's talk about the percentages. Quincy, what percentage do you have that is it that Big Ben is trash versus him still being the same Big Ben?
I think he has like a 40% chance of pulling this off. Like
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. So what he's saying is there's a 60% chance that Big Ben comes back and that he's Ben, but there's a 40% chance that
no, it's the other way. It's
the other way. He's saying 60% Ben's trash, right? And I get it. Listen, I get it. When you've lived through Ben Roethlisberger for 15 years and you just want it to be over, right? I get it.
I promise you, it's not 50-50. It's either going to be like
Peyton fell off a cliff. No, he did not. Okay, that comment. No, leave that comment up. Peyton fell off a cliff. No, he did not. Brett Favre, I believe, played in the NFC Championship game the year before he retired. And Breeze played in an NFC Championship game 2 years ago. And last year they went to the playoffs.
They both fell off cliff.
Peyton got carried that Super Bowl.
Yes, but the years prior, the 2 years prier, and this is after neck surgery because he got neck surgery and then he got cut from the Colts. He went to the Broncos. He set every NFL record.
It came back playing like
Peyton
was
Manning,
he there 1 year or 2
years?
years?
Peyton Manning was at every NFL record, every modern NFL record after the neck surgery. Then, yes, 3 years later, he fell off.
Here's what I'm saying. He came back from the neck surgery at 35, right?
Right.
Had 2 good years. Almost won MVP. I think he either won or almost won it.
Can Ben have 2 more good years before he falls off?
Hold on, Tony. Here's the important part. 35 got injured. Then 3 years later, he's 38 years old, gets injured during the season and comes back and he looks completely foreign to what Peyton Manning was.
He was bad the whole year. No, he was bad the whole year.
He was not as good at the beginning of the season. He got hurt.
Peyton at the end, I agree.
He got hurt, and then Brock Osweiler came in, and people were like, yo, Brock Osweiler might be the next thing. And then Peyton Manning came in and played worse than Brock Osweiler.
Yes, I will agree with you on that. But we have not seen Ben Roethlisberger play at that level yet, okay? We have not seen him play at a level where it's like, oh, it's over.
Games of last year.
Again,
He was bad.
We're gonna. Yes, I agree. He was bad. He played against the best defense in football on the road on opening day when he's
It
bad.
wasn't the best defense in football. Lamar sliced through him pretty easily. Like I you know what I mean?
Like, we're doing 1 game sample size now for who's the best.
We're not doing 1 game.
I just had a terrible
game last year.
Fine. Like, the Patriots were a top 3 defense.
Better numbers than Big Ben.
Can you say top 3? Can I say top 3 then?
We're gonna like a 7th best pass defense. Well, they were one of the better pass defenses in the NFL.
Yeah,
I'll give you that.
Stephon Gilmore won MVP. Defensive
overall
MVP,
defenses, they were highly overrated. They were like 5th best defense in the NFL.
Okay, top 5. We'll say top 5. He was against a top 5 defense in his only game he played. Yes, he was bad in that game.
Okay, Tony,
yes.
go with number 3 for you.
I don't even know I'm so angry. I don't even know my list is anymore. I lost it.
Okay, no, I'll go with number 3. Okay. Go ahead. Go.
I got the Browns. I have the Browns number 3. And now I just got to trash Baker for the next 45 minutes so I can, it's equal content here, right?
You don't mean as much to me as as Big Ben means to you.
It's unbelievable. I got to trash him. No, I mean, Baker Mayfield, Ace said everything I wanted to say about Baker, right? I mean, it's funny because Ace and I have actually agreed a lot on today's pod. Look, Baker Mayfield was my QB1 coming out of that draft. I thought he was a perfect fit for the Browns. I thought he could change the culture of that organization. What the really concerning part about Baker Mayfield is that, look, they signed Freddie Kitchens up to be the head coach because they felt like, boy, we don't want to break up that continuity between Baker and Freddie. And boy, did that continuity not stay. So it didn't work at all. And so that's my concern with Baker, right? Is all the problems you saw year 1, especially the interceptions, right? The turnovers. That really got amplified again in year 2. And that to me is the biggest concern with Baker. Otherwise, look, I think Baker Mayfield can still be a good quarterback. And I think Stefanski could potentially turn his career around. I think it's unfortunate that it's in this year, right, with the whole COVID situation and no mini camp and no training camp. And boy, it's going to take a while for that to all find its place. And so maybe Baker, has to take another redshirt year before him and Stefanski can really get on the same page. But, I still think Baker can be a good quarterback. Look, he's not on Ben's level. Yes, if Ben were to fall off this cliff that we're all talking about, then sure, I would put Baker above Ben. But right now, I'm not ready to go there. And the idea that you're going to put Burrow anywhere near this situation, I mean, look, let's wait till Joe Burrow throws 1 NFL pass before we anoint him as a better quarterback or a better quarterback situation than Ben Roethlisberger at this point. So I'll go Browns 3, Bengals 4. Although look, and Joe and what Quincy said about Joe Burrow is absolutely right. And Joe Burrow, this is one of the best quarterback prospects we've had in the NFL in a long, long time. I'm not trying to take anything away from that. I'm just saying, he's coming into a division where 3 ascending defenses. It's not going to be it's not going to be an easy spot for him. It's very tough, this division he's coming into. And again, he has a very similar situation to what Baker's going through, in that he has to come into the NFL and figure this whole thing out in a year where, boy, there's no offseason whatsoever for him. So again, he might have to have a redshirt year before he really gets going. So for me, it's Ravens, Steelers, Browns, Bengals.
So for me, number 3, I will say Steelers, slightly edging the Bengals. But I think when the year's done, I think the Bengals will have the better QB room, because I do think Burrow. I have Big Ben as a 50-50 right now. I think I had him as a 50-50. I think an elbow injury is super concerning on an aging quarterback, not a young quarterback. 38 is not an easy age to come back for, even if you're healthy. So, and to Quincy's point, a guy that has historically not taken care of himself as good as other quarterbacks as they're aging. So 38, elbow surgery, I'm going to give him the edge just because Joe Burrow is a rookie. And I think as a rookie, there's hurdles to overcome. But I think when it's all said and done, when week 17 rolls out, we're going to be talking about Burrow as a ascending star, maybe QB2, but
Doc in there as well.
No, but for sure QB3 in the division ascending. I like Burrow a lot. I have them 4th, just because he's a rookie. This is none of the backup, because I think the Steelers back as trash as whatever the Bengals can throw there. But
I would put Mason Rudolph above Ryan Finley. I would safely do that. And that's not me trying to love on Mason Rudolph here. That look, as A said, Ryan Finley.
It's fine. Neither of them should be in the league. Neither of them should be in the league, in my opinion.
Honestly, both of them belong in the bargain bin at TJ Maxx.
Yes, exactly. So I will go Steelers, Cincinnati. As rounding up, Ace, I think you have who the Bengals are 4. Burrow.
It's gonna be Joe Burrow at 4, and that's only because, like Tony said, he hasn't thrown a football yet. So it's hard to say what he could be. He could be anything from taking this division by storm like Lamar Jackson, or he could, essentially be someone that has to go through some growing pains with the Ravens defense, the Browns defense, also the Steelers defense as well. As you stated, there's 3 emerging defenses here. He's going to have to – those are going to be hard games. Now, the one thing that's, I think, boding well in his favor is the fact that this is a season where we may – and I've talked to this point several times – where we may see fans not at games. So with him facing a Steelers team on the road at Heinz Field without those terrible towels swinging, that may make things a little bit easier for him. But I think that is definitely when we get to the end of the season, I think like Sonny said, I think like several other people have said that he has potential to easily finish pretty high in this division.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could shuffle this all around at the end of the season. I mean, I think Lamar probably stays 1, and I would you would have to imagine what would have to happen for Lamar to kind of crater and someone else in this division to overtake him. I think those 2 things are just crazy. But everything from 2 through 4, I think absolutely could be shuffled around. I think if Stefanski and Baker hit it off, and all of a sudden Baker is the guy everyone thought he was going to be after year 1, I could definitely see Baker overtaking Ben. Like you guys said, Ben may fall off a cliff. Again, I'm not ready to go there yet. But if we're talking about what project out, yeah, I think it's easy to see Baker overtaking Ben or even Burrow. This would be absolutely crazy, but it could happen because of the pedigree. Burrow could overtake all of those guys as well. I mean, if you just have a monster year, he's got AJ Green and Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon. I could see it. I think most realistically in my mind, though, is it stays as it is. I don't know that we see any shuffles in this season because of, and I only say that because Baker and Burrow have to go through this whole season without any mini camps on it. So it's going to be learning on the fly. I think next season, though, would be a much more interesting take because then you've got a 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger where, does he retire after this year? What is the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh altogether? And then, Burrow and Mayfield with a full offseason to prepare for it. This is a very exciting future for this division at quarterback outside of the city of Pittsburgh.
Okay, so let's transition to the wide receiver. Sure. And we're going to start 4-1, right? That's what we said for the receiving core. Sure. Quincy, you take it first, man. Who's your number 4? Oh, by the way, before that, let me recap here. So I average what we did. Ravens overall came number 1. Browns came number 2, Steelers number 3, and Cincy, just on our average votes. But okay, so
Quincy, your 4 vote took it down. I mean, that's unbelievable. I can't forget. It was shocking though when I came into this podcast. They're all going to put the Steelers at 4. They're all going to put the Steelers at 4 for quarterback room. So I'm shocked that only one of you did. I was ready. I came in a little heated. I don't know if you guys noticed. I came in a little heated to tonight's podcast.
Came in a little sweaty. Yeah, I saw it coming in. Yeah. So the worst wide receiving core in the NFL. Not in the NFL. My bad. Okay. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Yeah. But it's not good.
Unless you're talking about Baltimore.
You know what you're saying? Yeah, it's got to be Baltimore. It's definitely Baltimore. It's Baltimore by a country mile. And I know, right? People believe that Hollywood Brown's going to turn into this great receiver and that, maybe you got something. And what's the guy? I like him, 80. Boykin.
Miles Boykin.
Yeah. Miles Boykin. I like him. I think he's a good ancillary guy, slot guy. I don't think he's a number 2. And then you got Willie Snead. And then, you
got some rookies.
It's a pretty didn't we do Joe Burrow dirt? Did we do Joe Burrow
some of us did, some of us
because
did not.
He was a rookie? Now we gonna do that with the number 1 overall pick. I don't want to hear us doing it for no 3rd round guys. All right. So here's the reality of the situation is that you got a wide receiver core that's led by Hollywood Brown that also is kind of assistant, and its second best receiver is Willie Snead. If that ain't mediocre, I don't know what is. That is a mediocre wide receiving core. Now they make up for it because they have great tight ends, but we ain't talking about tight ends.
Exactly. I wanted to put that caveat.
They have a great running game. They make up for it because they have a great quarterback. But let's not lie. If this wide receiving core were on your favorite team, if you're not a Ravens fan, you would scream because it's not a great situation to be in. Hollywood Brown could turn out to be something, but it's not guaranteed. He didn't really blow the tops. Well, he blew some tops off defenses at times last year. I don't want to do him like that. But he didn't have the numbers you would expect from a guy that's going to develop into a stud number one guy like you would like. And then outside of Hollywood Brown, it's real free agent pickup-y with Willie Snead, a guy who's just been around the league a lot, had some decent years in New Orleans. And then after that,
young guys. Yeah.
Young guys.
A lot of youth.
Guys. You got some youth there, but like the best guy, I think, is Miles Boykin when it comes to youth. I don't think he's going to be like a game changer at wide receiver. I just think he's going to be a reliable guy. So given the wide receiver talent in the rest of this division, I just can't justify putting the Ravens anywhere but a distant fourth.
Okay, so let me jump here for a moment. See,
Tony, it ain't just gonna be you today.
I appreciate it.
I think the Ravens are fourth. I think the Ravens are fourth, but not by a mile. That's what I would disagree. But the reality is we have a lot of unproven talent, and that's the thing. I look, like Quincy said, we did it for Burrow. I will do it for anybody that has a rookie. Like at some point, we're gonna rank middle linebackers. I'm counting on 2 rookies, right? So rookies until they take.
That's LJ Fort. Listen, LJ Fort.
No, not LJ Fort. The other 2 rookies. But hey, my biggest point is we have seen so many rookies that we're like, oh my god, this is a short thing, can't miss, and get to the NFL, and sometimes they don't translate. I love my wide receiving core projection. I like Duvernay a lot. I like Miles Boykins. I think Hollywood Brown is ready to take the next step. But they're all young, and other than Hollywood Brown, Boykins didn't run as many routes coming from Notre Dame. I think it's the same thing that's going to happen to our guy over there in Pittsburgh. And he struggled last year, right? So I think we have a lot of young guys. I'm proving that I think they have the potential, but it's still potential. It's not reality yet.
Yeah.
So because we're not ranking with tight ends, I think the Ravens are number 4, not that distant from my number 3, which we'll discuss later. But still, I'll put the number 4. What do you think, Ace?
For me, I think it's definitely the Ravens at 4. And, I kind of jumped out the window last year when we kind of started the show, trashing the Ravens. But I will say that Hollywood Brown definitely is a guy that is emerging, and especially with that speed and being that deep threat. And the more that he develops that connection with Lamar, I think the more that would help him. We haven't talked about it, but obviously AB retired again for a second time. I think if AB goes to the Ravens, this conversation is totally different. If he's added to that wide receiver core, it's totally different. And I think that everyone in this chat that is not a Ravens fan would understand how scary that would be if he was added to that Ravens wide receiver core, but he's not. He retired. He double retired. And you talk about Miles Boykin, under 200 receiving yards last year. I really thought that he was a guy that was going to emerge for them. Did not step up. We also talked about Willie Snead, who's a very dependable slot guy, has been since he was with the New Orleans Saints. He's been pretty solid there. He's a chain mover. But he's not someone that you're going to really like game plan for or anything like that. It's Hollywood Brown. And then you've got Devin Duvernay, who's coming in with, as we kind of discussed, as a rookie, you're not sure what he's going to do. But I would say that he's probably going to end up being one of the best receivers in this core. It's going to be a battle, in my opinion, between him and Miles Boykin in terms of snaps to see who's going to get that going there. But I think that's where it pretty much stops at. You also have the other guy from Cincinnati, that Chris Moore, he's just been in and out. He's never been a guy that's been super reliable. And you also have D'Anthony Thomas, who's kind of a gadget guy, but haven't really. I don't even think that he makes the team, as Sonny said. So I think that's where it is for me with the Ravens at 4.
Tony.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Ravens are 4, and I honestly think it's by design in a lot of ways, right? I mean, I don't think they want to put a ton of stock in wide receiver because they have such a good tight end core, and I think that's where they understand like how this offense needs to function. They understood like we have a thing we need to do at wide receiver. We talk about number 1 receiver, number 2 receivers, right? You want your big tall receiver, you want your possession receiver, you want your slot receiver. Baltimore's like, no, we want like fast guys who can stretch the field with Lamar. And we want run after catch guys, and they've got that. I mean, they went out and got Devin Duvernay. I think that the wide receiver core for what they want, I think is very good. I mean, I think Hollywood Brown is definitely going to improve year 1 to year 2. I'm not in love with Willie Snead, but like you said, he fills a role, right? You need a chain mover, you need a dependable guy you can count on third downs. Cool, right? I mean, again, it's not like they're going out there and they're trying to set the world on fire at the wide receiver position. So, they're 4 for me. But what's funny about the Miles Boykin thing, right? Miles Boykin was someone who Steeler fans really wanted last year because he's kind of like a Chase Claypool type, right? A big, fast receiver. I just don't know that he really fits exactly what the Ravens are looking for anymore. I mean, I guess he's got that speed.
No, he fits beautifully because he has the speed to stretch. The problem is he thinks he doesn't play as fast because he doesn't. I think this is the same thing exactly. Yeah. But he's also a brutal blocker as a receiver, so it also helps in that side. So go ahead. Sorry, I didn't want
No, absolutely. So I think. Look, this is the 4th best receiving group, but if we're talking about like this doesn't make them any like the 4th best offense or anything like that, right? I mean, this offense is fantastic. They will continue to be fantastic, and the guys that they got fit what they want. But there's talent wise, they're still number 4.
Okay. So third, I'll go back to Quincy. Who you have your number 3?
Oh, this is a solid 3 here with Pittsburgh, and it's not like they're terrible. They do have some questions at that number 1 receiver spot, but I like a lot of the young talent. And this is why I said that Baltimore is 4th by a little bit of a margin. And it's because I like the depth and the pieces that Pittsburgh have much more than Baltimore's. And I like the fit of those receivers much more than Baltimore's. Juju, he's a good 2. He's not a good number 1. Or he had a bad year as a number 1. Maybe he bounces back, but I think he's a better fit with somebody on the other side that can command a little bit more attention. And then you have somebody like a Deontay Johnson, who I think is just starting to bud a little bit. I think in about 2-3 years, we're really going to be talking about him as one of the better receivers in the NFL. And then you got guys like James Washington still around, who I joke about all the time, but James Washington is solid and dependable production. You get the ball in his hands, he can do some special things with it. And I think that's why, that at the end of the day, the Steelers wide receiving core is still a good one. It's just not great. And we're used to great from that wide receiving core. And we're used to them being at the top of this division. And that's why I think there is distance between them and Baltimore, because if you compare just what Juju to Hollywood, I would much rather have Juju Smith-Schuster to Hollywood Brown. I get the potential and the speed that comes with Hollywood Brown, but Juju's a consistent performer. Well, not a consistent performer, but has had a big year in the NFL, has had a 1,000-yard season.
2 big years.
2 big years in the NFL, has proven that alongside somebody, he can be really productive in the NFL. And then if you look at guys like James Washington or Deontay Johnson, I would take them over some of the young up-and-coming players in Baltimore's wide receiving room any day of the week, honestly, without hesitation. So I think Pittsburgh has something nice coming here. Will they have a quarterback for them to get the ball to them? I don't know what that situation is going to be like when Deontay Johnson's ready to bloom in 2-3 years. Nobody knows what that situation is going to be like. But as far as that wide receiver room, I don't think there's a lot of room. I don't think there's a reason to panic in Pittsburgh about that wide receiver room.
No.
Okay, Ace.
Yeah, for me, I think I have to follow suit as well. I'm going to go with Pittsburgh here at number 3. And I think that Quincy said everything that, essentially that I wanted to say is Juju Smith-Schuster, as I made that staking claim last year, I didn't think that he was going to be a guy that was going to have the same production in that number 1 role. I think he's an amazing number 2. He's a great complementary receiver. I think last year it showed that he needs someone else to be able to play across from him to be that other threat, essentially, to make sure that when he's got that number 1 corner or he's drawing that matchup from that number 1 shutdown corner or that double team, that he's able to be freed up. And I think that Deontay Johnson is definitely someone that emerged where defenses are going to have to account for his speed, right? To me, he's very similar to kind of Martavis Bryant. So I think if he continues to develop, he can be an emerging receiver there. I think that he's definitely, in my opinion, better than James Washington. And I think that the wild card there is Chase Claypool. You got a guy that's a big receiver. He's going to come in and be a threat. Could he be similar to what we've seen from them in the past with the Plaxico Burress? We have to see. Obviously, his 40 speed has said that he's a freak of nature, but we'll have to see what that looks like on the field, because when you look at the field speed, it doesn't really match up. Right. And then you also have Ryan Switzer, who I'm not like the
How dare
biggest,
you? How dare you?
the biggest
You don't gotta troll
Ryan
them.
Switzer guy, but I thought it was like hilarious when like there was an
It's in that
article
Edelman.
where Big Ben comes
Yeah,
out
yeah.
and is like, "Why can't we be Brady and Edelman?" And it's
Yeah.
like, no, Ryan
This
Switzer
could
is
be
a
us
great,
with you playing.
is a
Hold on,
decent
Ryan.
receiver, but no. So I think that it pretty much begins and ends there, which I think, like Quincy said, this is a solid wide receiver core from 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, however they end up doing it. But I think that, still there's more that I want to see from this group outside of Juju. Like if we had another guy that we could say there definitively that I'm afraid of, and I think Deontay Johnson could be that guy, but I can't line that up against a OBJ and a Jarvis Landry or AJ Green and a Tyler Boyd and say that he's there. So for that reason, I think that they have to be 3 for me.
By the way,
can I
has
read-
anybody see the Vic documentary?
No.
The Michael Vick?
The
Yeah.
30 for 30?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
All right, so in the documentary, they got that one dude who was like best friends with Michael Vick ever since they grew up, and whenever he talks about Michael Vick in that documentary, he's like, "Yeah, we got all this success, and then we moved out the suburbs and everything." And then like the whole time watching, like, "Who's this we?" And I'm just starting to think Ryan Switzer is that dude to Big Ben. Like he'd be like, "Yeah, Ben, we about to come back from this elbow injury. We about to get this money." And Ben's like, "Who is we?" Like, who's this we?
Ryan Switzer said today on Instagram, he said, I believe I will be one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. I have no doubt I'll be up there. I'll be talked about like Edelman is, like Welker is, like Jamison Crowder, Cole
That's
Beasley.
Juju's position, though.
Well, yes. Yeah. And that's the funny part about Switzer is like, you're not even going to start at slot. I mean, first of all, the only way Ryan Switzer is making this team is as a return man. And even then, Deontay Johnson was an all-pro returner last year. So there's no way he's beating out Deontay.
Tony.
Yeah.
Ryan Switzer's got hustle, heart, and
Yeah,
skill, and he's got effort, and he blocks really good.
No, he actually does.
Yeah,
He doesn't
he's got all the intangibles. He's got all the
Intangibles. I was gonna say the intangibles.
He's got the intangibles, brother.
Listen, the only intangible
Don
he
Gruden
has,
would sign him.
he's best friends with Ben. That's the only thing he has going for him right now.
So who's your number 3, Tony?
I have to tell you, we are. I did not expect this at all. We are actually going to agree. My number 3. So I thought we were doing this. This shows you where I am today. I actually thought we were doing re-ranking actual players, not the rooms. So I had to change this on the fly. So I had all the players ranked out. And so when you guys told me you had to rank the rooms, like, crap, I got to rearrange here. I have the Steelers as a number 3 room, and I did that because I just went down as I was ranking this. I looked at my rankings. I think the Bengals have a better room overall right now. But what's interesting about this division is everyone outside the Browns, they're young groups who are kind of on the rise. Man, I know the Bengals have AJ Green for another year, but I don't think they're going to get a long-term deal done there. In fact, they can't now because that deadline is passed. And so they're going to be, Tyler Boyd and John Ross and Auden Tate and whoever else they continue to bring in. They just got the kid from Clemson, T. Higgins.
That guy. Yep.
Yeah. So it's a young group that's coming together. The same thing can be said about the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? And I think right now, the AJ Green effect, and even Tyler Boyd. I mean, I had a hard time trying to decide whether I thought Tyler Boyd or Juju Smith-Schuster was a better receiver right now. I know a lot of people criticize Juju for last year and like, he only put up 1,400 yards because he played alongside Antonio Brown. So I went back and I looked up, right? I was like, okay, well, this has to have happened in the past then, right? Because a lot of receivers play alongside great receivers. Do they also have 1,400 yard seasons? So I just went back and looked at the last 5 years. The only 2 I could find and I went and looked at the guys who played alongside Julio, the guys who went alongside DeAndre Hopkins. Who were the other ones I looked up? Oh, Mike Evans and Michael Thomas. The only ones that I could find that had even similar seasons to Juju were Michael Thomas himself, who put up a great year in his rookie year when he played alongside Brandon Cooks, and Chris Godwin. Yeah, Chris Godwin alongside Mike Evans, right? Now, I don't think anyone's going to dock them for like, Michael Thomas wasn't that good that year because he played alongside Brandon Cooks. Now, I understand all the criticisms of Juju because he's a unique case because he's a slot receiver, right? You don't really want him on the outside. He can do it, but you really want him in the slot. And can you be a number 1 receiver from the slot? I mean, it's a changing game, so I think you can. But last year, look, he couldn't stay healthy. He just didn't put up the numbers. Now he didn't have a great quarterback. So I think Tyler Boyd right now and Juju are so close. Obviously, AJ Green puts this group over the top. So I have the Steelers at number 3. I like the Steelers room. I love Deontay Johnson. I would put Deontay Johnson as like the fourth best receiver in the division if we were projecting out, right? If we were saying like, based on the next 5 years, who do you think the best receivers are going to be? I would put Deontay Johnson very close to the top. I think Deontay Johnson is a more talented receiver today than Juju. But it's, we're not 5 years now. We're living in today. And right now, I have a lot of questions about whether or not Deontay Johnson and Ben Roethlisberger are even going to get on the same page, considering that, Deontay and Ben didn't connect a whole lot in preseason or training camp last year, and there's no offseason this year for those two guys. And Ben and young receivers don't really get on the same page at all. Chase Claypool, I mean, you can throw him out. He's got, like we've talked about, these rookies, they got to take a year off. I mean, there's no chance Chase Claypool is going to be a big part of this Steeler offense this year. So you're coming down to like James Washington, and whether or not him and Ben can get on the same page, because boy, James Washington last year looked very good at the second half of the year, right? He and Duck really had a thing going. He and Ben Roethlisberger in his rookie year had nothing going, nothing whatsoever. So I just for me, there's just way too many question marks about the Steelers at the wide receiver position to put them above the Bengals at this point. So I have them at 3, and I think like you talked about, Quincy. I mean, the Juju factor here, keeps them above the Ravens, but I can't put them above the Bengals.
Okay, so let me say 3 Steelers for me as well, but I don't think it's that I mean, Deontay Johnson, I will agree. And the best thing that can happen to Juju is Deontay Johnson becomes good, because Juju cannot be a number 1. The last year where he came to every game as a number 1, right? Because no more AB, Juju underperformed. Juju was a good receiver. I'm not going to say he was average. He was a good receiver, not great. A solid receiver. Now, he was a guy that is dependable, but you were game planning for him and you were able to shut him down. He produced 552 last year, right? So he took a big decline. I like what I see from Deontay Thomas.
Significant from 1,400, yeah.
For Deontay Johnson, I like what I didn't expect him to be as good as he was from Toledo. Yeah. But look, you guys, he and Hollywood Brown essentially were similar last year. Hollywood Brown played 2 less games and had 100 less yards, but 2 more touchdowns than Deontay.
Deontay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Deontay had a great year. Yeah.
I think Deontay is good. If Deontay doesn't become better, then the Steelers have a problem, because I don't think Juju can perform if he doesn't have a good to great outside receiver. He needs to have a threat. James Washington is an okay receiver. He is good for a couple of splash plays per year, but I don't think it's a guy that you can depend on him. And Switzer, yeah, we all know about him. I think the Steelers are banking that if Johnson can come and have a big step forward, that will help Juju, and then they can become a better receiving core. If not, they're gonna have issues, because after those 2, I can't depend on anybody else. And again, I think Deontay, he can be a good receiver to great. I think Juju is a good receiver that needs a really good receiver on the outside so he can be great. Okay, let's go to number 2, Quincy.
All right, so number 2 here, not going to be a surprise, Cincinnati Bengals. Let me put my hat off to them. They did some great work here in the offseason and in the draft, and also with maintaining AJ Green. But they got AJ Green, who at one point was the very best wide receiver in this whole division, maybe with a conversation with a prime Antonio Brown, but they were 2 different types of players, but 2 different types of dominance. So AJ Green, you got to tip your hat off to him just off of what he's done. And then you got Tyler Boyd, who has sneakily been one of the better receivers in the AFC North for the last 2 years. I think he just finally got over 1,000 yards, but he's been reliable and dependable for a long time there down in Cincinnati. You add T. Higgins, who is a 2nd-round pick, somebody who has a lot of potential coming out of Clemson, a university that puts out a lot of good wide receivers. And then you have Alden Tate, who's a great option to have back there in the red zone. Yeah, you have some options there, and you got a lot of weapons for Joe Burrow to throw to, and it's a very nice compliment there. So I won't get into the reasons why they aren't 1 yet. I'll save that for when I go to number 1, but I think they're a solid number 2 in the AFC North, but one of the better wide receiving rooms in football. Don't get it twisted.
Ace.
For me, it's going to be the Browns, and the reason why
I'm not going to agree.
The reason why is I think that some of our players, specifically Tyler Boyd, is somewhat underrated. I think when you look at it, there's OBJ, and then obviously there's Jarvis Landry, and I think with us there's AJ Green and there's Tyler Boyd, and I think once you get into the 3 through 5, that's where this decision came down for me, because when you look at the depth that we have, I think if I have to look at the Cleveland Browns depth chart, Rashard Higgins is definitely, I think, an underrated receiver. I think that he's very solid. I think that he's slept on. However, what evens this for me is I really can't recall this gentleman's name, and Quincy probably remembers him. You guys drafted him out of Florida. He was extremely talented, but
Callaway.
he had some baggage
Antonio
Callaway. Antonio
yeah,
Callaway. So I think if Antonio Callaway was still here from like a talent standpoint, I would say that it would be even closer for me. But when I look at it and I see Kadero Hodge, I see, Tawan Taylor, who's not a bad receiver. He's solid as well. And Damian Ratley, that's where it kind of starts to separate for me. But obviously at the top, when you talk about OBJ and Jarvis Landry, it's a very good group. Now, one thing I will say is, although OBJ, to me, I still feel like he's an elite receiver. A lot of people have looked and said that it hasn't worked out for him as they thought it would in Cleveland. And I think that we've seen that with the chemistry with him and Baker. I expect that to change this season, but it's almost ridiculous to see that they actually rated Stephon Diggs over OBJ. Like, I'm still not going with that. Like, that's not true at all. But
start on them damn Madden ratings.
But from that standpoint, for me, that's the only point that makes this argument is when we start to talk about 3 through 5 or through 6 or however you want to call that. I think that that's where the Bengals start to separate a little, and that's why I have the Browns at number 2.
Okay, Tony.
Boy, it's all of a sudden it's an interesting case. I had the Browns at 1 and the Bengals at 2, and all of a sudden I started looking at, we're talking about depth, and I'm like, you know what? I think I do like the depth of the Bengals a little more. But you know what? I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna stick with it because the top. I mean, listen, you have OBJ and you have Jarvis Landry. It's that 1-2 punch you cannot beat. I like the Bengals room as well. I think I'm gonna put the Bengals number 2. Here's a hot take. Everyone, a hot take in this segment. We're all gonna agree. I'm looking now that I look at the Bengals depth chart. I might have let AJ Green go, and I understand, like, hey, AJ Green, you can't let him go, right? It's basically I'm making the argument that you guys always make to me about Ben Roethlisberger, right? But this is a guy who hasn't played in a year and a half, right? AJ Green has not played in a year and a half, so what's he going to come back and be? Again, I know I'm making the same argument back. I get it, Quincy. I get it. Listen, let me just finish this point, then you guys can nail me for it. Yeah, understood. It's coming. But I look at the second half of this depth chart. I mean, Tyler Boyd, right? The last 2 years, 1,000 yards with Andy Dalton and then Ryan Finley. You got T. Higgins coming in. No, I don't love T. Higgins. I didn't love his separation quickness in college, and I wonder if he can get separation at the next level. But clearly, Clemson wide receiver, they have some pedigree there. John Ross came on a little bit. Now, if John Ross could stay healthy, John Ross, I believe, had like 18 yards per reception last year. He just as a deep threat, you can make that work. And then I think Auden Tate, man, what an underrated receiver. And maybe this is my bias because, a lot of my family went to Florida State and they loved Auden Tate. But, Auden Tate was a guy who in college, everyone felt like, boy, he really could have been something if he had quarterback play. And now you put him at this level and he still doesn't have quarterback play, but he's still putting up decent numbers. I believe he had 500 and something yards last year. You wonder what he could do with a guy like, if Burrow were to develop. I do. I like this. I like this wide receiver group. You got Erickson, who I think is a pretty good slot receiver. Yeah, he could be a very good slot receiver. I just wonder, like, if you have AJ Green, all these guys that I've just talked about, right? You're not going to have 5 wide receiver sets every play. You got Joe Mixon up there. I just wonder how they're gonna service all these players, or if someone like Auden Tate is all of a sudden going to be wide receiver 5 because there's just too many guys at the top. And so that I think that stunts the growth of a guy like Auden Tate, who I think could be a really good wide receiver. But yeah, this is the second best receiving group in the division, but a good one overall.
I think when healthy, the Bengals are the deepest. But the problem is the Browns, and I'm gonna make my 1 and 2. The Browns, in my opinion, are 1 because the top 2 receivers are in the Browns. AJ Green, which was gonna be my argument, hasn't played in a year and a half. Now, to going back to the point with Juju, you see what Boyd did is what you expect a really good receiver to do. He stepped up. AJ Green hasn't played. I still gonna put away 1,000 yards. bad quarterback play, still put over 1,000. I actually think
it's Andy Dalton for half the year, so it wasn't Mason Rudolph or Duck.
I still think
point
Tyler
taken.
Boyd is the number 3 actually over AJ Green, because I will make the argument that I make with Big Ben. We haven't seen him in a year and a half. We haven't seen him produce. How he coming back? I love AJ Green. Look, AJ Green has roasted my Ravens for years, right? So I think he used to be number 1A, 1B with Antonio Brown. And to be fair, AJ Green did more damage against us than Antonio Brown did. Like, AJ Green will burn us way more than what Antonio did. I'm talking specifically to the Ravens. So, but I have Jarvis and Odell 1 and 2, and then a separation Boyd, Green, right? And then the depth. But the problem that you have with the Bengals is the same problem that you have with the line for the Bengals is health, right? Green is not healthy. John Ross is not healthy. So I disagree with Tony. They should have brought AJ Green because of the health concern, because you cannot depend on John Ross, right? And you're hoping to get some productivity over AJ Green. And because of the health concern, you need all the weapons ready because you want those weapons there for Joe Burrow, right? You want to have Joe Burrow to have weapons. And again, the health concern with the Bengals has been there. It's well documented. So I actually think they made the right decision on keeping AJ Green. And the reality is, for me, the Browns are first because those top 2 dogs. We're talking about Jarvis Landry is one of the best slot receivers in the entire league on the slot position. And OBJ is still a versatile receiver. So in the division, that's 1 and 2. And like I said, then you get Boyd as a number 3. So that's why I'll get the edge. Now, if we knew everybody was healthy, yeah, the Bengals have a more in depth than the Browns, but the Browns are top heavy with those 2. So I'll take Browns 1, Bengals 2. I'll let Quincy talk about his number 1 pick.
Yeah, it's going to be the Browns. And AC made some good points in Lou for your Bengals. They do have the deepest wide receiver room. I just personally think wide receiver depth is a tad overrated at the end of the day. Like, wide receiver is one of those positions that if you have 2 really good wide receivers, you can usually have them play a majority of the snaps. And especially if you have a third guy there. And that's what they did.
As long as they can stay healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, with the Browns, where they went away from, where they made their biggest mistake is when they decided they were going to have all these wide receivers out there instead of just keeping it simple with just having Jarvis and Odell as your only 2 receivers. I think that is going to get corrected this season with some of the changes that they're making to the offense. But when your 1 and 2 is Odell, who I think has the potential to be a top 5 receiver, and Jarvis, who played last year like a top 10 to 15 receiver, then 4 and 5 honestly doesn't matter as much into the conversation because you just have so much there at the top with Jarvis and Odell. And I think also if you look at the fit, those 2 fit together really well because Jarvis is somebody who can hurt you, 10 to 20. He can get those tough first downs. You can get the ball in his hands. He can break a couple of tackles. And then Odell is somebody you want to get the ball down the field, deep threat, kind of a guy you want to go there. So they both fit better, and there's less kind of congestion on what you have to do with those. But it's going to be an interesting season to watch to see who can do more with that because I think John Ross with Joe Burrow is a very intriguing prospect. Looking at what Joe Burrow did with Jamar Chase last season, who was a burner just like John Ross is. I think there is some potential there for John Ross to have an unexpected great season this year. But it's going to be interesting. But as far as right now, the Browns have 2 receivers you can make an argument that are in the top 10 of the NFL. And it's hard to stack up with that even when you have the great depth that the Bengals do have.
Gotcha. So Ace.
So for me, I think there's several points that I want to hit on here. The first reason is I think one person that is criminally underrated by people who don't watch the Bengals is Tyler Boyd. And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, Jarvis Landry, based off of us watching them on the Dolphins and stuff like that. He's so much better than Tyler Boyd. That's not true. When we talk about the last 2 seasons with him being in Cleveland, if I were to tell you that Jarvis Landry only had 75 more receiving yards and 2 less touchdowns than Tyler Boyd, you guys would probably think I was insane, but that's actually true. Not to mention, we also talk about John Ross. Like, you're probably looking at John Ross and you're like, he only had 500 receiving yards or whatever. That's not good for a guy who's been in the league as long as he has. He had those 2 games at the beginning of the season before he got hurt. So he had a game where he had over 200 receiving yards. He was leading the league. He was in the top 3 receivers at the beginning of the year. And then we also talk about depth, right? So guys got hurt. So our number 5 receivers are valid because guess who that number 4 or 5 receiver was last year? It was Auden Tate, who came in and put up the yards that he did, which almost rivaled Marquise Brown, who, you know, potentially most people would consider a top 5 receiver in the AFC North if we're counting all the receivers. So when you talk about it from that standpoint, when you talk about depth and stuff like that, the Bengals have receivers. Then you talk about Alex Erickson. Alex Erickson, believe it or not, was one of the top all-pros in the NFL when it came to return yards in terms of punt returns and stuff like that. But he's also a very good slot receiver as well. And a lot of teams have always been nipping at our heels to trade for Alex Erickson because they believe he's what Ryan Switzer thinks that he is. And that he can actually have the potential to do that. So you talk about that back end half. I mean, AJ Green to me is always going to be AJ Green. He hasn't played in a year and some change. But honestly, AJ Green, from everyone who was following him at camp before Drake Kirkpatrick decided to step on his ankle, which I'm so glad we got rid of Drake Kirkpatrick this year. Everyone was saying he's still AJ Green. So I expect AJ Green to be AJ Green. I understand if some people aren't going to feel that way, but he's actually got a huge chip on his shoulder and is ready to prove people wrong this season. I think once you move on from there, you talk about T. Higgins. I mean, T. Higgins literally could be our 5th receiver. Like, he could start on plenty of teams in the NFL in terms of being that second receiver. But he is a rookie, so I'm not going to give that much to him. But when you have all of these players on one team, it's just kind of hard to determine who's going to even stay. So for me, that's why we're the number 1 receiving core. And I had to wear this T.O. jersey just because we too, Tony, also have a very rich history of having good receivers in the AFC North. It's not just the Steelers. We do that. We do the wide receivers well as well.
That's what.
Okay.
Quincy, you're trying to say something. Quincy's on mute.
Yeah, Q, you're mute.
TJ Hushmanzada, Chad Johnson, Ocho
Johnson,
Cinco.
Henry.
Yep. Y'all had some dogs, but it's y'all had
Marvin
some dogs.
Jones,
I mean, like,
Mohamed
Marvin
Sanu.
Jones,
Yep.
All right, we're getting. Yeah.
Oh, hold on. I think I might have a little bit of a better history as far as the recent times come here. We need to relitigate this whole Pittsburgh. Because really, when I think of Pittsburgh being great, I'm thinking like Hines Ward.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Antonio Brown. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Juju.
AJ Green, Chad Johnson, TJ
Ryan, Emmanuel Sanders. It's tough. It's
Emmanuel Sanders. All right, like, he's decent, he's good, but like I'm not about to add him into the. We just said TJ Hushmanzada.
Yeah. Emmanuel Sanders, TJ Hushmanzada. Yeah, they're on the same level. Yeah, I agree. I don't know where we're going.
Emmanuel Sanders.
Le'Veon Bell, by the way, Le'Veon Bell is a receiver. Don't forget about that. Le'Veon Bell as a receiver. They put him in the slot. Listen, they put him in the slot. That makes him a receiver.
Okay,
if you want to call him a wide receiver, y'all should have gave him the wide receiver franchise tag.
Pickens, Carl Pickens too. Peter Ward, Peter.
He's a running back. This is a tough one, man. Ace, you made a ton of good points here about why the Bengals should be the number 1. Mike Wallace. Yeah, Mike Wallace.
Mike Wallace did his thing.
How did I forget about Mike Wallace? Oh, right. I didn't like Mike Wallace.
A Raven fan put Mike Wallace in there. You know that ain't no happy memory.
Yeah. I wasn't a Mike Wallace guy either. I mean, I don't know if the Ravens like Mike Wallace. I didn't like Mike Wallace. So.
Hold on, wait. Let's not sleep on the Ravens wide receiver history. You know, Steve Smith at the end of his career.
We don't have history in wide receiver.
All the old aging wide receivers. Derek Mason.
Yeah, like Quadri Ishmael at one point. Come on. He was.
Oh, Rocket Ishmael.
Yeah.
Y'all had the Ishmael. Oh, who else?
Derek Mason. Actually, Derek Mason was really good, and I had not fun.
Torrey Smith was Jacoby Jones. That was one of the best Dancing with the Stars special guests ever. Like, he was
a great returner. He was a great returner.
He was supposed to be T.O., but you know he kind of nixed that trade.
Bashard Perriman. Let's not forget about the GOAT, Bashard Perriman, the legend.
Let's
The
talk
man-
about
Rashard
Perriman.
Perriman did his thing in
Hey,
Tampa.
UCF.
It's the
UCF.
automatic, baby. He was a
He
dog.
did a little
Oh,
bit.
Anquan Bolden. How are we forgetting about
Anquan
Anquan Bolden?
Bolden.
That's actually a good.
No,
Anquan-
yeah.
you know what
you,
That-
you,
The
Yeah.
Ravens only have good receivers when they're at the end of their career. So like they just need to sign somebody really old and they'll be good. So
Which is why
Antonio
AB was a
Brown
perfect.
in the Ravens
AB was a perfect pickup for them. It was very on brand.
he retired. He retired.
come out of
Maybe. He's
retirement.
retired. Yeah, he's retired twice already. The guy, it's a weekly occurrence for him at this point.
Okay, so for wide receiver, we are here basically in agreement for the most part. There's a little flopping there between on Ace's part, I think, for 2 and 1.
Yeah.
But overall, we have Browns 1, Bengals
Yeah.
2, Steelers 3, and Ravens 4. I think there's not as much as debate as on the wide receiver room. I think for the most part, also all of these wide receivers are young because even for the Browns, they're veterans, but still young. You can say they're in the prime on their career. And in the Bengals case, AJ Green is older, but the rest of that receiving core is young. And Steelers and Ravens are very young.
Super young. Yeah, it's all
and
young.
inexperienced, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of potential in the other two teams. But hey, guys, I want to say thank you for listening to the pod. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share with other fans. This is the type of conversations you're gonna hear in this podcast. We challenge each other. I would say this is one of the podcasts we had the most agreements, but for the most part, we challenge each other a lot. And this is once the season starts, it's gonna even be crazier because you know, like week 1. When me and Q go head to head, and we might have to put some wager into that game, but hey, it's gonna be fun. So please subscribe, please hit that like button, please share. Ace, where they can find other than here?
You can find me on New Stripe City on YouTube. You can also find me at New Stripe City on Twitter and Instagram.
Q.
Q, you're on mute.
Been eating them carrots. Y'all know where to find me on Twitter at Quinn_C. If you're a Steeler fan, don't do it because you're just gonna get mad at me and I'm gonna have to mute you. And then also if you want to find me on YouTube, just put in search Quincy Carrier. I pop up there. There's some people leaving some lovely comments right now on my videos. So join the fun. Join the fun and jump on in. So that's where you can find me.
Okay, Tony.
You can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. I do a weekly hit on Locked On Steelers I guess I do 2 now. I do one on Fridays and one on Tuesdays. So you can find me on there, Locked On Steelers with Chris Carter. And then this is my gig. So make sure you guys subscribe, hit the bell, all that YouTube goodness.
Tony Two Chairs, shout out to you, man.
I didn't realize I didn't clean up the back. I didn't clean up the background today. I apologize, guys. It's unprofessional.
You can
I'm a podcaster, not a video guy.
No, I think it's pretty dirty back there. I think it still needs to be cleaned up.
No, it does,
You got a towel you can wipe everything with, though.
It's true. That is true. So SCG Sports for me everywhere: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, IG. You can follow me there, and obviously, please subscribe to this channel. For the most, our videos are going to be live, so hit that bell so you can be part of the conversation when we come live. We're going to try to do, for the most part, all this consecutive Mondays. We're going to keep ranking positions in our divisions as we approach the season. So, hey, guys, thank you all for joining us in the live stream, and have a great night.
See you.
Peace.